What do the Kachin people want? Why are the Kachin people fighting? How well are they doing in their battles? And do the Kachin people want independence from Myanmar, or do they just want more power inside of Myanmar? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hello everyone, it's ASEAN Anthony, and in this video, the great Kachin people and the Battle of Bhamo. So why are the Kachin people fighting? Well, when the British controlled Myanmar, the British controlled Myanmar from the central areas where the Bamar people were the majority. When Myanmar gained independence from the British, the power was handed over to the Bamar people. And the Kachin people and the other minority groups in Myanmar were very suspicious of this because the Kachin people and the other minority groups did not want to be dominated by the Bamar population, who were the majority. In 1947, the minority groups like the Kachin agreed to join independent Burma in exchange for equality throughout the nation and the right to self-governance if need be. This is called the Panglong Agreement. Shortly after the Panglong Agreement was signed, the man who negotiated the Panglong Agreement, who was also the man who freed Myanmar from the British, was assassinated. And after his assassination, there was a constitution written by the Bamar people in central Myanmar. And in this constitution, equality and self-governance, the right to self-governance by the minority groups, was not promised in the same way as the Panglong Agreement originally dictated. And the broken promises of the Panglong Agreement is what gave birth to the armed ethnic groups we see in Myanmar today. And after this collapse of the Panglong Agreement, we start to see these armed ethnic groups pop up throughout Myanmar, and the Kachin people were one of these groups. They decided to start an armed ethnic group to protect the historical Kachin people and the historical Kachin land. As these armed ethnic minority groups began to spring up in Myanmar in the 50s and 60s, you start to see fighting break out, battles breaking out, on and off, and many different ceasefires in between. And for the Kachin people, this was also true. But in the 1990s, in the early 1990s, there was a ceasefire, and the ceasefire held for many years. Now, obviously, the ceasefire was eventually broken because now we see that there's fighting breaking out in Kachin State. Let me just focus on one particular battle to try to get my point across, the Battle of Bhamo. This is a recent battle that has been going on for 2 years now, 2 years and counting. It takes place in Kachin's second largest city called Bhamo, and it's on a critical supply route, a critical trade route that is, and it's near the Irrawaddy River. And we all know how important the Irrawaddy River is. In late 2024, the Kachin-led forces decided to take control of what was at that point a Myanmar government-controlled city of Bhamo. Now, they decided to launch a surprise attack. And this surprise attack was not only successful, it was too successful. After the surprise attack, they decided to isolate, surround, and even capture the city of Bhamo. At least they tried. The residents inside of the city, many of them became trapped, and lots of them tried to escape via boat on the Irrawaddy River because the roads were too dangerous. Fighting was going on everywhere at this time. As late 2024 turned into early 2025, the Kachin forces kept gaining territory. They took over military installations. They took over a university. They even took over a government-controlled airport that the government desperately needed at that time. They were absolutely dominant from January of 2025 until April of 2025. At this point, there was an earthquake in 2025, a major earthquake in Myanmar that caused both sides to call a ceasefire. Now, this ceasefire is when the tides turned because at the ceasefire, the Kachin land forces began to try to evacuate some of the trapped Bhamo residents. And as they were trying to evacuate some of them, the government forces decided to attack and cut off some of their evacuation routes. The Kachin forces got absolutely smashed by the military at this point. So we are now in May of 2025. And after the surprise attack by the government of Myanmar, from May of 2025 to September of 2025, the government began to retake a lot of the lost territory. The Kachin forces had completely lost all momentum that they had. They weren't done and they were still fighting, but they lost all of the forward momentum that they had. And unfortunately, that is how the year ended. From September of 2025 to December of 2025, the leaders in the Kachin forces started to admit that they were withdrawing from many areas. This is not defeat, but it's very, very close. The fighting did not stop there, though. It continued into the next year of 2026. In January of 2026, we start to see a little bit of forward movement by the Kachin forces. And there are even reports of small groups of the military even surrendering to the Kachin forces. And after January, from January of 2026 to August of 2026, it is basically a stalemate. Neither side has gotten full control of Bhamo City, but it is not the same fight from 2024 where the Kachin forces were just annihilating their enemies. Now it's far more of a stalemate. A good time to negotiate, I might add. But this is just one of many battles going in Kachin State. I just chose to talk about the Battle of Bhamo. Most of the intense fighting in Kachin State has moved on to a different city, pronounced the Shwegu. Okay, that is a story for a different video. But let me tell you what the Kachin people are fighting for. They are not fighting for independence from Myanmar. They are fighting for a federal system in Myanmar, similar to what we have in the United States, where each state has their own autonomy. They are able to make laws, collect taxes, form state militias or state militaries, etc., etc. This could work if done correctly in Myanmar. This is what most of these armed ethnic groups are fighting for. Not all. Some groups are actually fighting for independence, but many of these groups just want more sovereignty inside of Myanmar. One country, many state localities.